The invitation, January 2001. Arnold Schwarzenegger, 53 years old and among Hollywood's highest-paid actors, received invitation to join group of friends for skiing trip in Sun Valley, Idaho. Despite busy schedule filming commitments, business meetings, political consultations as he considered California governorship, Arnold accepted. Skiing represented rare, pure recreation for someone whose entire life was scheduled and strategic. No cameras, no negotiations, no performance required. Just speed, risk, and freedom. Arnold had been skiing since childhood in Austria. The Austrian Alps were practically his backyard growing up. He was experienced, confident, perhaps overconfident. At 53, his body wasn't 25-year-old champion physique anymore. But Arnold's self-image hadn't fully accepted aging's limitations. That disconnect between who Arnold had been physically and who he was at 53 would nearly kill him. The crash the ski slope was intermediate difficulty, nothing Arnold hadn't navigated hundreds of times before. Conditions were good, fresh snow, clear visibility, moderate traffic. Arnold was skiing with friends, enjoying rare moment of being regular person rather than Arnold Schwarzenegger. Then it happened. The details remain somewhat unclear. Arnold himself describes the sequence as happening too fast to process clearly. He caught an edge, or misjudged a turn, or simply moved wrong. At skiing speeds, small mistakes become catastrophic instantly. Arnold crashed hard. Not graceful tumble that skiers practice, falling from violent collision where body meets frozen ground at speed that turns snow into concrete. His right femur, the largest, strongest bone in human body, snapped cleanly. The sound was reportedly audible to skiers nearby, a crack like tree branch breaking. Arnold felt it more than heard it. Structural failure inside his leg, massive bones shattering under impact. He lay in snow, instantly understanding the severity before pain fully registered. Decades of bodybuilding and action films had given Arnold intimate knowledge of his body's mechanics. This wasn't minor injury. This was serious damage. The realization as ski patrol mobilized and emergency response began, Arnold experienced something he'd spent lifetime avoiding: complete physical vulnerability. He couldn't stand, couldn't walk, couldn't even move without excruciating pain. The man who'd built career on physical dominance, who'd played unstoppable characters, who'd cultivated image of invincibility, lay helpless in snow, dependent on others for basic movement. The broken femur was just the beginning. The fracture had damaged surrounding tissue, torn muscles, created internal bleeding. Emergency medical assessment revealed he needed immediate surgery. Not routine medical procedure, major orthopedic intervention, requiring metal rods inserted into his femur to stabilize the shattered bone. Arnold was taken by ambulance, then airlifted to hospital. The contrast was stark. Days earlier, he'd been action star commanding millions per film. Now he was trauma patient being transported by helicopter, facing surgery with no guarantee of full recovery. The accident forced confrontation Arnold had been avoiding. He wasn't 30 anymore. His body, despite maintaining impressive physique through training and diet, was aging. Bones became more brittle. Reaction time slowed. Recovery from injury took longer. The invincibility was illusion. And illusions shattered just like femurs. The surgical procedure was complex. Inserting intramedullary rod through Arnold's femur, essentially rebuilding his leg structural support with titanium hardware. Surgeons had to carefully align bone fragments, ensure proper healing angle, prevent permanent damage to surrounding nerves and blood vessels. For hours, Arnold was unconscious on operating table while surgeons repaired damage. This was different from cosmetic procedures or minor medical interventions Arnold had undergone before. This was major trauma surgery where mistakes could mean permanent disability. When Arnold woke from anesthesia, reality was unavoidable. His right leg contained metal rod. The bone would take months to fully heal. Physical therapy would be intensive and painful. There was no guarantee he'd regain full mobility or strength. Even if recovery went perfectly, the leg would never be quite the same. Scar tissue, reduced flexibility, vulnerability to arthritis and chronic pain. These were likely permanent consequences. For someone whose entire identity was built on physical excellence and capability, this was existential crisis as much as medical emergency. The long recovery, the weeks following surgery were humbling. Arnold, who'd performed his own stunts and prided himself on toughness, needed help with basic tasks. Walking required crutches, stairs were challenging. Simple movement caused pain. Physical therapy was grueling, more painful than the most intense workouts of his competitive bodybuilding career. Rebuilding muscle mass around damaged bone, regaining range of motion, relearning movement patterns that had been automatic for decades. Arnold approached recovery with characteristic intensity, treating rehabilitation like training. But the body doesn't respond to willpower alone when healing from major trauma. Progress was slow, frustrating, resistant to the mental tactics that had always worked before. He also had to navigate public relations implications. Arnold was in pre-production for Terminator 3, with filming scheduled to begin soon. Could he perform the physical demands required? Would the injury delay production, cost the studio millions, damage his reputation as reliable action star? Arnold pushed himself aggressively in therapy, perhaps too aggressively. His doctors warned against overtraining damaged leg, but Arnold's psychology couldn't accept cautious patient recovery. He'd spent lifetime pushing through pain, ignoring his body's warning signals, treating physical limitations as obstacles to overcome through determination. This time, that approach risked permanent damage. Bones heal on biological timeline that willpower can't accelerate. Pushing too hard too fast could result in improper healing, chronic issues, or re-injury worse than original fracture. The psychological impact. The injury forced Arnold to confront mortality and aging in ways his previous life had allowed him to avoid. Heart surgery in 1997 had been serious but somewhat abstract. Heart valve replacement was medical procedure, not traumatic accident proving physical vulnerability. The skiing accident was different. Arnold had been doing something he'd done thousands of times, using skills he'd possessed since childhood, and his body had simply failed him. Age had caught up despite all the training, diet, supplements, and willpower. He'd built entire identity on transcending physical limitations. His life narrative was Austrian farm boy transforming himself into champion through relentless discipline. The broken femur suggested there were limits even discipline couldn't overcome. Friends noticed changes in Arnold's demeanor during recovery. The relentless optimism became tinged with frustration. The confident certainty about his physical capabilities became more cautious, more realistic. He was being forced to accept that the body that had built his empire was aging and vulnerable. Maria Shriver later described this period as difficult for their relationship too. Arnold wasn't good patient. He hated dependency, resented limitations, struggled with the forced inactivity. The qualities that made him successful action star made him terrible at recovery. The comeback push. By summer 2001, Arnold was back on set filming Terminator 3, Rise of the Machines. Just 6 months after breaking his femur, he was performing stunts, fighting sequences, physical demands that would challenge healthy 30-year-old. The comeback was testament to his discipline and work ethic, but it was also risky. Medical advisors expressed concern that Arnold was pushing too hard too soon, that filming action sequences on leg that hadn't fully healed could cause long-term damage. Arnold ignored the warnings. He had movie to deliver, reputation to maintain, image of invincibility to restore. Admitting he couldn't perform at previous level meant accepting defeat, something his psychology fundamentally couldn't process. On set, Arnold worked through pain that would have stopped most people. Stunt coordinators modified some sequences to reduce stress on his healing femur, but Arnold pushed for more demanding choreography than doctors recommended. He needed to prove to himself, to Hollywood, to the world, that the accident hadn't diminished him. The filming was successful. Terminator 3 performed well at box office when released in 2003. Arnold's performance showed no obvious signs of injury. The comeback narrative reinforced his brand: unstoppable, unbreakable, always returning stronger. But privately, the cost was real. Arnold dealt with chronic pain in his leg for years afterward. The aggressive return to action filmmaking before full healing likely contributed to long-term complications. The metal rod remained in his femur, permanently literal reminder of the accident he tried to overcome through willpower alone. The hidden consequences what Arnold didn't publicly acknowledge. The accident changed his action career trajectory. After Terminator 3, his film roles became progressively less physically demanding. Around the World in 80 Days, 2004, was more comedy than action. His governorship, 2003 to 2011, provided convenient excuse to step away from action filmmaking. When he returned to acting after governorship, the roles were different. The Expendables series allowed him to share physical burden with ensemble cast. The Last Stand, 2013, acknowledged his age explicitly. Sheriff past his prime, no longer fastest or strongest. The broken femur marked transition point. Before the accident, Arnold could plausibly play ageless action hero. After, his roles had to accommodate reality of aging body. The injury forced evolution from unstoppable to resilient, from invincible to merely tough. This wasn't failure, it was necessary adaptation. But for someone whose identity was built on transcending physical limitations, it represented fundamental shift in self-perception. The broader pattern, the skiing accident, was an isolated incident. It was part of pattern of injuries and medical issues Arnold faced as he aged. Heart valve replacement surgery in 1997, the 2001 femur fracture, multiple orthopedic issues from decades of heavy weight training, the 2018 emergency heart surgery. Each medical crisis forced temporary acknowledgement of mortality and limitation. Each time, Arnold responded by pushing harder, training more intensely, proving he could overcome. The pattern was unsustainable but psychologically necessary. Arnold had built his life on denying limitation. From Austrian poverty to bodybuilding dominance to Hollywood, stardom to governorship, every achievement was proof that boundaries could be transcended through will. Physical vulnerability contradicted that entire narrative. So Arnold treated each medical setback as enemy to defeat rather than signal to adjust approach. The femur fracture became challenge to overcome rather than message about aging's realities. The strategy worked short-term but accumulated long-term costs. The lessons ignored. Arnold could have used the skiing accident as opportunity to reconsider his relationship with risk and physical limitations. At 53, continuing to ski aggressively, perform dangerous stunts, train with bodybuilding intensity, these were choices that increased injury probability. He could have scaled back, prioritized longevity over proving toughness, accepted that wisdom sometimes means acknowledging what you can't do anymore. Other action stars had made that transition, finding roles that utilized their presence without requiring superhuman physical feats. But Arnold's psychology couldn't embrace that path. Scaling back meant admitting decline. Accepting limitations meant contradicting his life's fundamental message. Better to risk injury than accept age. Friends suggested he was being reckless, that pride was overruling prudence. Arnold interpreted their concern as underestimating his resilience. He'd overcome every previous limitation. Why would this be different? The perspective 20 years after the accident. Arnold can acknowledge what he couldn't then. The broken femur was warning he ignored. His body was telling him to slow down, to adjust expectations, to accept that 50s aren't 20s regardless of training or willpower. He has admitted in interviews that the skiing accident should have prompted more significant changes to his approach to physical risk. That pushing through pain and injury, while sometimes necessary for achievement, can also be a form of denial about aging's realities. But he also maintains that refusing to accept limitation drove him to achievements that cautious approach would have prevented. The same stubbornness that ignored his body's warnings also built his empire. You can't easily separate the productive denial from the destructive. Denial, they re the same quality applied to different contexts. The final truth, the skiing accident that broke Arnold Schwarzenegger's femur, didn't end his career, didn't permanently disable him, didn't stop his ambitions. In that sense, it wasn't the catastrophic event it could have been. But it did mark transition point, the moment when Arnold's body definitively announced it was aging regardless of his psychological refusal to accept aging. The moment when performance became harder, recovery became slower, vulnerability became undeniable. Arnold survived the accident and returned to action filmmaking. But the return was conditional rather than absolute. The invincibility was revealed as carefully maintained illusion rather than genuine immunity to physical laws. The accident almost ended it all, not in the sense of killing Arnold or ending his career, but in the sense of exposing the lie at the heart of his self-mythology, that willpower and discipline could indefinitely overcome physical limitations. They couldn't. The femur shattered, and with it, the last pretense that Arnold Schwarzenegger was somehow exempt from the aging process that affects every human body. He recovered. He returned. He achieved more. But the accident remained permanent reminder. You can overcome many limitations through determination, but you can't overcome biology itself. Eventually, everyone's body tells them no. Arnold's response, ignoring that message, pushing through anyway, proving resilience through refusing to quit, was simultaneously his greatest strength and his most dangerous weakness. The accident almost ended it all. It didn't, but maybe it should have at least slowed him down. It didn't do that either.